Good morning, my creative friends. Dr. Minette Riordan here. This is Painting in Your PJs Live with Minette. I am not in my PJs today as I have an early networking meeting right after our juicy live time together. If you're brand new here, welcome. I want to encourage you to take a minute to subscribe. There's a button on the bottom right corner of the video or just below the video on the dashboard as well, so you get notified when I have new content showing up. I am live most Mondays to Thursdays at 7 a.m. Mountain Time, that's 6 a.m. Pacific, and 9 a.m. over on the East Coast. I will not be live tomorrow, just a quick reminder, as I will be heading out of town for the day for some networking down in Denver, Colorado. And we had the most amazing thunderstorm in the middle of the night. So much lightning. Good morning. Good morning. So much lightning that it just was flashing so much we couldn't even sleep, and it was off in the distance. And then the thunder came, and then the rain came. And there's something magical about sleeping in a thunderstorm. Although I would have liked a little more sleeping, a little less thunder, perhaps. And it made me think about how I'm feeling this morning. We're going to be doing some abstract emotional landscapes, which I've been doing for about this last week. But today I want to play with watercolor paints because we have so much less control over watercolor. And that's how it feels when we're talking about feelings and emotions. We have less control over the things that we're playing with in some cases and intentionally in this cases. So I have just a few colors of watercolor paint. You're not going to need a lot of colors. I have some 140-pound cold press inexpensive watercolor paper for this kind of watercolor play. We don't need fancy tools. I have just a couple of different brushes. I also have my Derwent Inktense pencils because I love them so much. And some of these lessons were inspired by the book Watercolor is for Everyone by, she has a beautiful name. Let me go to her name again, Kateri Ewing. And I bought it on my Kindle years ago, and I come back to it over and over again for just fun, abstract, creative play. So, again, welcome. Painting in your PJs is all about using art as creative process as a way to connect to ourselves, to be able to name, label, see our feelings, but also to just discover where we are on our personal journey. It is the most powerful tool that I have found for self discovery. Over the years, I've done decades of filling journals and morning pages and all different kinds of workshops and retreats and talk therapy and coaching. But for me, nothing gets right to the point and the purpose of who we are as much as making art does. So I'm going to switch my screen. Good morning, Julie, and dive right into some watercolor play. I've already had 2 cups of coffee. I was up early this morning, so now I've moved on to a nice cup of tea. And I have I think this is a 6 by 9 piece of watercolor paper, not very big. Excuse me. I need a sip of that tea. And I have taped it down to, this is just an old cutting board. I bought a set of cutting boards. I actually use them for some printmaking from somebody's class. It was a cool process. But because they're plastic, they're great for taping watercolor paper down when you're working on small sheets like this. If you don't tape it down, it will buckle and move around. This may buckle a little bit because I didn't tape all 4 sides. And I'm probably going to be a little quicker and shorter because I do have a networking event to attend bright and early at 8 a.m. this morning. And remind me, Julie, to tell you about it because it's one you would probably enjoy attending. And I am going to start by picking a few colors, and I picked a very limited palette, so my colors are kind of already chosen for me. So I have 6 colors in here. I have 2 blues, a green, a magenta, a gorgeous sort of azo gold, and a brighter yellow. And I am just going to stick with this really, good morning, Kay, really minimal palette this morning. And I'm going to play with color, and I'm thinking about how it is that I feel this morning, how these colors, I am drawn to this palette over and over again because I think it just sort of expresses the gamut. It feels pretty magical and joyful, I woke up feeling energized and excited this morning. So you might think about picking 3 to 5 colors for this activity that sort of express how you're feeling. And if I were working on canvas, I might do some, journal writing, but I could even do that with some pencil and paint over the top of it or sort of paint around the edges of my page. So I'm just going to come in and do that. So I'm feeling sort of energized, alive. I had a great in person happy hour yesterday with a girlfriend, got to see my son. I'm feeling well rested this morning. Buenos dias, Blanca. So I'm just taking note of how it is that I'm feeling. I'm also feeling very full. I told someone yesterday I was feeling sort of squishy, like muddy ground, like there's so much to do before my retreat and a couple of other programs I'm working on. And it just feels like I'm full to the brim with my to do list right now. So even though I feel like I have lots of energy, I'm well rested, my brain feels a little mushy. So I have all of that going on. And these are just normal emotions. There's nothing good here, there's nothing bad. There's nothing bad about this bit of overwhelm I'm feeling. I know that for me, I just need to sit down and do a little organizing, do what I love to call a brain dump, get everything out of my head and onto paper. And I've done that a few times this week, and there always seems to be more. So I'm going to start with this paper with a lot of water, and you're not going to be able to really see that on here, but you will once I start to add paint. So I'm getting my page super, super wet here. So we're going to be working a lot wet on wet. I'm going to do 2 different versions of an abstract emotional landscape today. They're completely different. I love them both, but they're both great ways to just connect with how we're feeling on the page. And I'm sort of thinking about which color feels like energized. There's something about this sort of magic color. And this is my favorite part of playing with watercolor is just letting it play. And for some reason, this magenta is feeling very alive today. And I have nowhere I'm trying to go with this piece. I'm literally just playing and exploring watercolors, seeing what they're going to do. I love how it feathers out on the page. This is the beauty of the Daniel Smith watercolors. It's worth investing in good watercolor paints, even if you have, then I use less expensive paper for this kind of play. And I'm just letting that paint rest on the page. I'm not trying to move it around. I'm not trying to do anything to it. So interesting. I always like start to see animals in my page. Like this is the nose of a puppy dog maybe, and like his head over here and onto his body. I wasn't trying to make a shape at all. And I'm feeling like this sort of dark blue kind of feels like that I'm sort of full to the brim. And I'm just letting the magic of the color explode on the page. Now my doggie's going to disappear, which is totally fine. So it almost feels like I have this beautiful container that's full of all these different energies and emotions that I am experiencing in the moment. I want to get some of this green in here as well. So look at that beautiful spot where there's no water. It's dry there. So the watercolor isn't flowing in that particular spot, but there's something magical about just giving ourselves permission to play on the page. And once this is dry, I'll come back in. I brought my Derwent Inktense pencils and I want to maybe do some drawing over the top of this to see what happens. And at this stage with this particular piece, I could move that color around a little bit. Notice how it stays inside the water and that dark color is running around the edges, which is going to create an interesting frame on the page. But then I can also, and you guys have probably seen me do this before because it's such one of my favorite things to do, that then I can take and I can pull this out. So when I think about being full to the brim, there's all these little sort of tendrils of thought There feels like there's all these little things to do, and I can actually just continue to play and doodle to pull that paint around through other parts of the design. It might be nice to feel a little grounded and rooted, so maybe I can see these as roots to help me feel a little more landed and all these things that I have to do. And the interesting thing about feeling full to the brim, Daniel Smith Watercolors, and a great place to get them, Julie, is at Jerry's Artorama. Maybe watch for when they have a sale. You can get them on Amazon as well. I love supporting our local independent art stores. So I would check at Jerry's. Online, you can get them probably just about anywhere. Dick Blick, like I don't think they carry them at Michael's. Again, I feel like I have this crazy critter in here, and I'm gonna stick my brush in my water, not in my cup of tea. And every paper that you use will react differently. So this cold press paper has a lot of texture, and I'm seeing that texture show through in my design. And again, I found a board which I love because it's movable, right? So I can move these paints back around, shift the colors, have them flow off. Paper towels are great to play with. Yes, they are so vibrant. Like normally just the little, sort of beginner sets that you get, they won't spread like this. They won't mix and blend nearly as well as nicer. Winsor Newton are pretty good as well, but it's worth investing in just a couple of tubes of colors that you can mix. And the tubes last forever. That's the nice thing about watercolor, is that you don't need a lot of paint. So I'm going to set this one aside and let it dry naturally for a few minutes. Letting watercolor dry naturally creates a different effect than if I were to try to use my dryer on it, which is also possible. But I'm looking, so the interesting thing about watercolor is how I'm feeling is energized and alive. And as watercolor dries, what happens is that it gets lighter, and I'm like, oh no, I need that vibrant blue in there. So the other colors feel pretty good. I love how these colors mixed up here, but I want a little bit more of that blue. So I'm just going to touch that around in a few different places, let it mix and flow on the page. I could even have some fun with spraying it with some water and seeing what happens. Again, this is just that emotional landscape of exploring how I feel, what's happening inside, noticing how the different colors really connect with my emotions. One of my favorite ways to play. So, this is a very abstract form of play. And now I want to do one that is more landscapey. And for this one, I'm going to use a couple of shades of blue. So I have these two shades of blue, which aren't very different. I wish I had one more, and I probably do somewhere. I don't know what I did with my big box of watercolors, but I'm going to use what I have in front of me. So I'm going to use these two blues. And then I have a variety of earth tones, right? From a sort of dark brown to that nice azo gold and some raw umbers and sepias. And I'm going to create an abstract landscape, a sort of mountainous landscape. And I'm just going to have some fun again with putting the paint on there. And what I love about this particular activity is this one, the way that we're going to play with the color is all about relaxation and calm. So the first one was really all about connecting to how am I feeling right now in the moment. And this one is I want to connect to that center of calm. I have lots of energy, but that fullness and that overwhelm is there. I have to teach my visual journaling club twice today. So I also want to make sure that I'm calm and grounded as I go throughout the rest of my day. So I'm going to start with water and a sip of tea. All right, you can see that a little bit because my water is now blue, which is totally fine. So I'm going to come in with this bright blue, just let it play on the water here. I'm going to try this other blue. They're very, very different blues. And what I love about watercolor is how we can continue to just really move it around the page just with a wet brush. We can actually use that brush to remove color if we want to. So I've got a lot of water on here at the moment, really loving that beautiful ultramarine blue. And now I'm going to come in with, I think some of this it's very orange. Orange and blue are complementary colors. I love this color combination. It just always makes me feel very calm and soothed. And I don't have the names. Do I have the names of these? Oh, I do. So this is looks like it's a quinacridone burnt orange, and it's gorgeous. And I'm going to touch that right up there, but I'm going to leave some gaps. So that time I went in a little bit dry on the page without adding the water first, because I want to just have some of these gaps on the page, and I still want to have some of these places where the color is really flowing together. I'm also noticing that I'm really preferring that aquamarine color. It's almost as if I've got the top of a mountain range. I've got some beautiful greens happening here on the page as I'm blending these together. I'm going to come back in with another swoosh of water, letting that orange just flow down, and then I'm just going to repeat the process. And there's something just magical about just playing on the page, letting the colors flow. The colors are telling this story. There's nothing I need to do here. And I'm going to try maybe something a little bit lighter. Again, this time I went in dry on the page. Oh, wow. So now I'm getting this absolutely gorgeous, gorgeous green where the two of them are blending together here on the page. But I want to have those colors feel related there. So I'm going to come back in with some of that darker color. Coming in with that water one more time. Again, I'm being intentional with some of those white spaces because I am going to come back in with my Derwents and add some line detail over the top. Good morning, Yvonne. Welcome, welcome. And I'm going to keep going with just blending my oranges and my blues, letting them kind of just mix. This just allows us to see what's present on the page. Coming back in again with that little bit of darker orange. And maybe I'm going to try a different brush stroke this time. So I did a lot of back and forth, so now I'm coming in with almost a little landscapey shape here. And I'm getting a beautiful brown where that ultramarine and that burnt orange are mixing together. I just love the way the colors mix and play on the page. And again, just watching for where the things are drying, how they're flowing together. Some of them are drying very quickly. It's interesting. I have this little pool of that different blue up there, and I'm feeling like I want a little bit of that blue, maybe in some different places. So what might happen if I just came in here and brought a little bit of that blue in just a few places, just so I make sure I have, just like we do with acrylic, that we want to make sure we have all of that color moving around the page. Again, just playing with the water, playing with the brush marks. Seeing what can we create, adding just a little layered texture. And again, the idea here is to connect to our feelings, to paint through our feelings, to paint out what we don't want, and to paint in what we want to experience more of. And I'm just loving how the colors are kind of flowing together. Interesting, this one is such a brighter yellow, so it's not feeling like quite a match here. And so I'm thinking, how can I get a little more of that yellow in? What if I just blend these together a little bit more? And maybe just bring in a little bit more of that beautiful burnt orange. And I just love how they mix and match. Again, this is like an abstract sort of mountainous landscape. Just want the story to feel coherent. All right, so this one also just feels like it needs to get nice and dry, and then I'm going to come in with my Derwents over the top. I don't know, something sort of shrubby happening in the corner here. Also maybe a little bit of just what's happening in our mountains up here, but I'm going to let this one dry, and then I'm going to come back in with those Derwents and add some line work and some texture to these as well, and see what happens. All right, so let's set this one aside. This is such a fun practice to me. I could literally do this for hours and fill hours and hours of PJs of watercolor, and just even this little 15-minute session, my whole body feels relaxed, my voice feels relaxed, and it's so fun to watch that color just run and play on the page. No control here, right? I don't have control when that water is just kind of flowing. Now I have these beautiful dark greens in the center, and I have these little bit of pools over here which are going to dry very differently than the rest of it. All right, so this one is still super, super wet too. And you can see, because I didn't tape it down on the sides, it is buckling a little bit, but I'm okay with that. So I'm going to hit this with my dryer and see what happens. But first I'm going to take that paper towel and I'm just going to pick up some of those little puddles. And this is just to speed up the drying. If I was, doing this on my own, I would just paint them and then set them aside for a few hours, and in another session come back to do the drawing. And I'm definitely seeing some kind of wild character here. What I love about the paper towel is you can also use that to add texture. I could use it to even move some paint around and mess up that background a little bit. All right, now we can get it dry more quickly, so bear with me for just a minute. I'm still seeing some kind of crazy fun sort of critter emerging here. And it did end up getting just a little bit messy. So the cool thing about watercolor is you can always reactivate it, right? So I'm wanting to maybe quit messing with it, but I'm seeing some kind of funky little, I don't know, growing amoeba critter. I have no idea, but there seems to be a funny little nose here and some little hairs, and there's a little eye right there. So I'm going to come back in with this magical creature and just have some fun adding some line and shape to it. So I'm using Derwent Inktense pencils, which are my favorite water soluble pencils. And I dipped it into the water first. You can use these in multiple ways, but one of the ways that you can use them is get them wet first, or you can add the lines dry on the page and then add water over the top of them. I can also use them right here where that paint or there's still water on the page. I think we're going to give this guy a little nose and a little eye. Little crazy critters showing up on the page. And I'm going to stay in my same color family that I used here. I don't need to change up my palette. I'm just coming in and having some fun, just adding a little more magic here. I can even use this to even brighten up colors or add a little bit of texture. So maybe this critter has a little bit of fur happening here. So again, I'm just giving myself permission to play on the page, explore. This is the nature of working with these abstract emotional landscapes, is really to be willing to play and explore, to let go of any need to know our destination and just be with what is in the moment. So this feels like, kind of a busy, crazy little character here, which was how I said I was feeling, sort of full to the brim with things to do. And so it's sort of a physical manifestation of that. So I'm just noticing, not judging. Nothing's wrong here. Just adding a little bit more color just makes it a little bit more vibrant, gives it a little bit of detail. Coming in some of these white spaces and just adding some shapes, little fun scribbles. Maybe it's fur flowing off of our critter's back here. And the Derwents are interesting, right? So sometimes you can see here, you can still see the lines here as well because my paper is pretty wet. I'm not going to be able to completely soften those lines. And it's part of what I love about them is I can get that color flowing, but I also still am going to maintain some of those lines on the page. And I think we need some eyelashes in here. I can also come in with my beloved Stabilo Marks All pencil, right? And if I wanted to just maybe add a little shading, create a little dimension, I could do this with a darker Derwent 2. This one just creates a different effect. So much of these, excuse me, landscapes is really about play, exploration, permission to be on the page. I could do this whole thing related to grief. Um, my mom's going to have a CT scan today. Her doctor saw something in her chest that's a little concerning. So there's, excuse me, a little element of worry as well. And we found out yesterday she fell at Easter when we were there and fractured a disc in her back. And all they can do is just have her rest at this point. So, there's just lots going on in my life, in your life, and just being present. To what is in the moment, right? And the more that I paint, the more those emotions start to just appear on the page. All right, that one feels pretty done, and he's pretty quirky and magical, so I'm going to take him off the board. I'm going to go back to the other one. And I may have time to just do one more. It's another one of my absolute favorite ways to play with emotional landscapes. But I'm pretty pleased with this quirky little character that showed up almost sort of parrot-like, right? Without maybe a parrot nose. A little drop of water. We're going to just flow. But fun way to just play on the page. I had no idea where I was going when I started. And this feels like that colorful visual representation of all the different emotions that are swirling within. And part of our personal practice is to learn to get better at labeling our emotions, noticing what we're feeling. The more we notice, the more we can say, okay, this is great, I want more of this. Or the more we can say, oh, I've been caught in a feelings trap and I really need to move my way through this and get on with my life. It's funny, as I picked it up and started to move it around a little bit here, the first thing I'm noticing is that it's calling out for more of that bright yellow over here on the page. So before I'm done with it, I'm going to come back in. And the cool thing about watercolor, so now I'm putting that yellow on and it's quite dry, right? And so that color isn't going to move around as much and it's going to be much more vibrant as well. So now it feels complete, like it just needed some little touches of yellow to just, again, now my eye is flowing. You notice the difference, right? So we've got yellow here, we've got yellow here, a little bit of yellowy green happening down here, and all of a sudden it doesn't feel like my eye is so dramatically drawn, but my eye can now move around the page a little bit better as the viewer of this piece. And I also think it's important when we're working with these different emotional landscapes and play, it's always great to sign your pieces, but also to date them. And I think, is today the 10th already? Man, the month is flying by. So this is May 10th, 2023. So this is a snapshot, right, of where I am right now in this moment. And I kind of like it. I like it a lot. All right, let's come back over to our landscape. I love the way that it's looking, but it's also still really wet. Really loving this area up here where we got some really smooth blues, this little bit of dark pooling at the top, the way these are all running together. Just yummy, yummy, yummy. And so I'm going to work on this one while it's wet. Instead of trying to get it dry first, I am going to sop up a little bit of that pools over there. And this is just a piece of backing board from some drawing paper. I always keep, when I buy a pad of paper, I always keep the cardboard off the back. Great tip. They're awesome for using for your watercolor painting, any other kind of small painting. They're also great for bookmaking. They make great covers for books. And I'm feeling like I am again wanting to just come in with a little bit of this dark color. Maybe just see where we can add some shadows. And I'm definitely going to come back in with some color as well, but for some reason wanting to just bring in a little bit of that depth. And it's interesting, it's all kind of falling on this side over here, which is fine. One of the classes that I took last week when I was that 2 weeks ago already in Asheville, was tangling with watercolor. It was so much fun. And I loved how she really talked about, how to just work with the water on your brush. It's one of the things to really practice when you're playing with watercolor is how much water to use. Like it's probably the for me the trickiest part and the most fun part. So always having a paper towel to take some of the water off your brush. And that gives you a lot more control, especially when we were tangling right? We needed to have a lot of pigment and not as much water in our brush if we wanted to get the nice, sharp lines going. So I love just that little bit of black darkness. I'm noticing I've got some little bit of pool of this gorgeous color over here. So maybe I'm just gonna pull some of that in to a few other places and darken up that color a little bit. Move that paint around. And then I'm going to come in and just have some fun with some line making. And let's see. And just test a couple of these blues. I think this is. And I'm going to get my pencil wet just because I like the way that the lines kind of flow. And I'm just going to come in and start to make this even more abstract. Add a few lines. You could do this with any watercolor pencil or even just colored pencils. I just happen to really love the vibrant intensity of the ink tints. Just adding some lines. I might even add just some scribbly lines. Notice I'm holding my pencil loose, like way far back. I'm not trying to draw. I'm trying to get just some abstract marks happening here. So the more I let go of control, the more I relax and sink into that place of calm. And all of a sudden I have this just sort of very interesting abstract landscape that for me is all about connecting to calm, trusting that I have all the time I need to get through all the things on my to-do list. Again, it's amazing what you can do to change a landscape just with a few lines and a few colors, right? Like there's nothing complicated about this piece, right? There's that idea, there's no sort of destination here that I was trying to get to. And I'm wondering if I want to come in and just add maybe a little more definition, a little more landscapey, little shadows in the mountains back here. Julie, did the thunderstorm wake you up last night? We had like so much lightning and thunder over our house. It was crazy intense. The first really intense one I think that we've experienced here. The lightning seemed to just go on forever. So just that little bit of dimension there, right? Maybe add a little bit of that same color into a few other places. Oh, it was a little more wet over here. Interesting. So we got a different effect happening with the pencil where there was a little bit of water. Ooh, glad you got home before it hailed. This was like middle of the night, so I think I woke up at 11:30 because the lightning was so bright in our bedroom. And it was far away, but eventually it came kind of landed right over our house. But I went to see my son yesterday who lives kind of in southeast Fort Collins, and he on the way to his house, I definitely got caught in a hailstorm. Always fun. Bright sunshine everywhere. And then just out of nowhere, this swoosh of hail. All right, so this one looks pretty groovy also. We did not get any hail. We just got lots of thunder, lightning, and rain. I think, well, we got hail the day before when I was walking, or on Sunday when I was walking with you, we got hail. But I don't think we got any last night. All right, this is feeling pretty good. Wanting to maybe just blend those colors, move them around even a little bit more. So I love, love, love working with these just really simple, abstract landscapes, two completely different ways of approaching watercolor play. So this one ended up being this kind of funky, crazy critter. This one is just kind of a really interesting landscape. And in our last few minutes, I want to show you one more. Grab another piece of paper. And again, this is just inexpensive 140-pound cold press Artist Loft Michaels brand paper. They have all their paper pads on sale right now. Buy one, get one half off. And I was out of watercolor paper, so I went and stocked up yesterday. And I'm making journals for all the amazing women coming to my retreat next week. And so that was super fun to start in on those. One of the many things on my to-do list. All right. So normally I would want that tape to maybe be a little even all the way around, but I'm not going to worry about it. I am going to start with some clean water. So when I'm working with watercolor, I like to have a couple of jars of water nearby or switch my water out pretty often so that I'm starting with fresh water. And with this one, we're going to do just a kind of simple two-color landscape. Oh, and I forgot I had my gold. I was going to add some gold to this critter here. Let's see if we can come back in. This is a fine tech gold. It takes a long time and a lot of water to really get it activated, but it is a beautiful, beautiful shiny gold. I don't think you'll be able to see the screen. I'm not going to worry about that. I will come back and play with gold later. So we're going to do a two-color landscape with orange and yellow. Orange and yellow are beautiful together. I could also stick with that. Um, I mean, blue and yellow are gorgeous together, but I could also stick with the gorgeous oranges that I was working with. So again, I'm going to come in with a stripe of water across the top. This time I'm also going to do a stripe of water across the bottom, but I'm going to leave about an inch gap in the center. So water across the top, water across the bottom, and then a nice dry gap in the center. Got some drops in my gap, but that's okay. And I'm gonna come back in with this gorgeous ultramarine. This is a super fast one, but it creates the most just impressive, simple little landscape. Again, these are all great, just beginner techniques for playing with colors, seeing what that color will do. And I'm going to bring in even just a little more water. And if I want that to continue all the way to the edge of the page, I just continue to move that water. So the last one was all about calm. This one feels more about movement and energy, more about play and color. So I'm seeing some trees already sort of magically appear in my landscape. So I'm just repeating that imagery here. Remember, I can always drop in a little more color as needed. And then in the center, I'm going to come back in with this beautiful yellowy, orangey, azo gold color that I love. And this is going on dry, not wet. And the magic happens when it starts to mix with what's above and what's below. Just filling up that space, letting the colors just flow and blend wherever they want to go. I want a little bit more, right, to have them flow a little bit more. I'm just going to come in with a little bit more water, playing with the water in just two colors, and we can all of a sudden just create this really sort of dreamy, magical landscape. I'm going to finish that off, pull that all the way to the edges, and I may even come back in. What would happen if I just pulled some even brighter yellow in here and let that flow and mix and brighten that up a little bit? But look how my colors are blending up there to create almost this sort of gorgeous mirror effect. My yellow got maybe a little whiter. I would have maybe liked a little more blue down here. So I'm gonna clean up some of these puddles around the edges. And I'm just gonna bring some more of that blue back in again. Let that darken up. It's mixing with those colors and being, very green on the page. But I want that sort of foreground of the piece to maybe be that little bit washier color, or I can just dry my brush and just use my brush to pull up some of that color, move that color back again. I've got some lighter spaces where there wasn't as much water, which is really, really beautiful because what's happening is now it's sort of looking like sky and clouds, and we're seeing those reflections. So again, this is Watercolor is for Everyone by Kateri Ewing. So super inspired by some of the lessons in her book. They just always bring me to that place of calm and fun. So I got a lot of puddles here because my paper is buckling in the middle and I'm not loving those super dark edges. So again, just a little paper towel or tissues or what I had close. So I'm just using some tissues and I'm just soaking some of that up. Some of the pattern might stick. We could have some fun with some pattern and see what happens. And it might not when it's dry. I won't know until it's dry, which is part of the magic of watercolor. So that, my friends, is our lesson in abstract emotional landscapes, playing with the colors of our emotions, playing with a calm, relaxing landscape, and then a little bit more energizing and vibrant, but still quite abstract landscape that really captures kind of a moody, rainy day. So thank you everyone so much for joining me. Reminder, I will not be here live tomorrow. I will be with Julie on my way to Denver bright and early. So I will see you all next Monday. And I don't know what we're going to do next week, but I'm feeling like we're going to do some animal paintings because I need to catch up on my 100-day project. And I love creating once using multiple purposes. So maybe we'll have some fun with animals in acrylic and watercolor. So have a beautiful, beautiful rest of your day. Thank you. Thank you, Blanca. I appreciate that. And I'm excited to head off into a full day and a full weekend. And while I'm sitting in that networking meeting on Zoom, I'm probably going to get to sit here and keep painting, which makes me super happy as well. Very relaxing, isn't it, Tori? I love how relaxing it is. I will see you guys all soon. Don't forget to like this video for me so we encourage more people to keep watching and keep this channel growing. Thanks, everyone. Dr. Minette Riordan. This is Painting in Your PJs live with Minette.